Center for the Ethiopian Educational Information and Communication Technology presents Educational Satellite Television Programs.
Hello, teacher. Hello, students. Welcome to our next lesson in our unit on statistics. Last lesson, we learned about the difference between qualitative data and quantitative data. We also learned about discrete and continuous variables. Today, we will learn about grouped discrete data. Next, we will learn about grouped continuous data. If you are ready to begin, we will start by talking about grouped discrete data. Frequency distribution is a table which shows a list of all values of data obtained and the number of times or frequency these values happen. This data will be organized into a grouped frequency distribution table to make a large amount of data easier to understand. Raw or unorganized data is organized into classes and counted to show how many of each class exists in the raw data. These tables are used to learn basic statistical information about data. In this video, a frequency distribution table shows how many times John has eaten a type of food called a pie.
Let's look at a frequency distribution table. Here are the numbers of pies that John has eaten over a number of days. If you want to put that information into a table, you can do something like this. The data can be put into groups: 0 to 1, 2 to 3, 4 to 5, and 6 to 7. These are all groups. How many pies has John eaten 0 to 1 times? We can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is the frequency for the group 0 to 1. For the 2 to 3 group, he's eaten 1, 2. So the frequency for this group is 2. 4 to 5 pies, he's eaten 1, 2. 6 to 7 pies, he's eaten just 1. Now we add our frequency numbers. The answer is 10. When we check it against our data, we can see that we are on the right track.
We can use our own example. This is how many cups of coffee my friend drank over the last 7 days. This is an example of ungrouped data. To make this data easier to understand, we can choose a class size. By class, I mean category, the different possible number of cups of coffee drank each day. To make this data easier to understand, we can choose a class size. By class, I mean category, the different possible number of cups of coffee. Then we tally or count the number of times he drank 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 cups of coffee. For more complicated ungrouped data, you find the classes by finding out how many classes are needed, usually between 5 and 20. Then you determine how wide a class needs to be. This is called class interval. You find the class interval by subtracting the minimum value from the maximum value, then dividing the result by the number of classes needed. It is easier to round the class interval to the nearest whole number. In the example of the cups of coffee, we thought about how often my friend drank 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 cups of coffee. To find out how many days my friend had less than 3 cups of coffee, we need a cumulative frequency distribution. You can either do this by adding the frequencies of each class. This is called less than cumulative frequency. Or by subtracting the frequency of each class from the total. This is called more than cumulative frequency. Remember, this frequency distribution is for a discrete variable. Here are the number of cups of coffee 10 people drank in 1 week. Please write them down.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Welcome back, students. I am sure you all found these answers. I'm sure you found that the class interval is 3. The lower class limit of the second class is 4. The upper class limit of the second class is 7. The frequency of the first class is 2. Let us now learn about what is called the class mark or class midpoint. Using our example from the activity, the class midpoint for the third class is 8 plus 11 divided by 2. The correction factor is half the difference between the upper class limit of a class and the lower class limit of the next class.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Welcome back, students. Did you all remember how to find the class midpoint? Here is what I found. The correction factor is half the difference between the upper class limit of a class and the lower class limit of the next class. You may wonder why we need a correction factor. Think about a cup of coffee. Sometimes you might drink less than a full cup of coffee. This is an example of continuous data. By adding the correction factor to the upper limits of each class and subtracting it from the lower class limits of each class, we get what are called class boundaries. We will now do some review. To construct a frequency distribution, we find the highest and lowest values. Find the range, highest values minus lowest values. Choose the number of classes. Find the class interval by dividing the range by the number of classes and rounding up. Select a starting point, usually the lowest value. Then add the class interval to get the lower limits. Find the upper class limits. Tally the data. Find the frequency. Find the cumulative frequency. Congratulations, students! You have now learned about grouped discrete data and grouped continuous data and can understand it by using frequency distribution. Until next time, thank you, teacher. Thank you, students.